appreciate that. Please, your hands together for our MC. It's not easy to MC, to stand in front of people. And she's doing a great job as well. So well done. Thank you so much. Okay, all right. It is so good to be here, first and foremost. I'd like to say thank you very much to Miss Debbie and all of the team that have worked hard to make today a reality. Like she said, it's been her dream. So to think about something, to conceptualize an idea and then to bring it to life is something, it's not an easy feat. So I say well done to her. And I know that this is just the beginning of greater things. There's more to come this time next year or the next edition. This place will be full to capacity, all right? Because we have ambassadors here already who are having learned all that you will learn today. We'll go out there and preach the gospel of effective communication. And, this time next year, this place will be filled to capacity. So thank you very much, Miss Debbie. I met Miss Debbie and my daughter's, well, after my daughter would come home every day, I talk about Miss Debbie, and she'd, pronounce things in a way that would make my head swell, So I, she'd talk about Miss Debbie all the time, and I eventually met her, and I thought, oh, wow, fantastic. So she's my daughter's elocution, used to be at her old school, elocution teacher, and she did such a fabulous job. So well done, Miss Debbie. Thank you very much. It's been great meeting you. So when she approached me for this, yes, she deserves a round of applause. Thank you. So when she approached me for this, it was a given. I was available today. Saturdays usually, especially in the morning, are usually very dicey for me. I like to do a lot of, home things, domestic things. So that's why I was a few minutes late as well. And I apologize to her. So, so I'm glad to be here today. So I'm talking about the power of effective communication. And I think that for you to have signed up for this kind of event is because you have an idea of what communication is. I don't want to bore you. We know communication goes beyond just how you speak, but how you look, what you're not saying, how you write. I like that there's someone who's going to be here from human resources as well, because a lot of people obviously are hitting a brick wall, even trying to get the job of their dream, because perhaps the way you're communicating in your CV, perhaps when you get into the interview, how you speak, certain issues. So it's not that you're not brilliant. We have a lot of brilliant people in the world, but obviously the way they communicate. I know some of us have met people who you think, this person is a great person, but it's just that, okay, we're not all Yoruba here. Or da. How do you say that in English? That's just the way they speak. They're just very crass. They're uncouth. So certain people don't understand that the reason why they don't have friends, the reason why they don't have quality people around them, the reason why they're not getting the jobs of their dream, the reason why they're not invited to things, the reason why everybody in the family, or at home, their kids just enter into their rooms because they work in. Mommy and daddy are home now. Your kids just go into the room. Is the way you're communicating. So I don't want to take too much time because, like I said, the reason you signed up for this is because you want to be a communicator. So you know what communication is. You know what you want to sound like. You know how you want to portray yourself. And so we know we're not talking to beginners. We're not talking to children. So I'm going to start with the benefits of effective communication, because we're not just talking about communicating here. We're talking about effective communication, because we all know we communicate. Whether you know it or not, you're communicating. When you walk into a room, the way you sit, the way you stand is communicating something. And so sometimes I remember when I was younger, I used to feel like the most misunderstood person ever. Remember when I was younger, a lot of my cousins used to say, oh, she's proud. And I wonder, why do they say that? That I'm proud, And it took me a while to figure it out. Because when I was younger, I was a bit more, obviously I didn't quite understand myself. I always tell the story of how I was a middle child. And so the middle child, oftentimes if you're a middle child, you're not the firstborn. The firstborn is the person that everyone has great expectations of. You're carrying the family name. If you're a guy, if you're a man, you're carrying the family name. Your father has, so much expectations of you. If you're a girl, your mom wants you to be in the kitchen, wants you to know how to cook. Firstborn. I hail you people. But I was glad when people say, people don't have expectations of me. I was happy because for me, it allowed me to just be able to explore the different parts of myself. So I was the middle child that they didn't quite have expectations of. I was not the firstborn, I was not even the secondborn. So I was the thirdborn, and so it was the only two things my mom wanted for me is don't get pregnant out of wedlock and finish school. Anything else you do with your life, whatever. So it was like freeing for me because I was able to explore. I knew that I didn't want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be a doctor. My dad was a lawyer. And so my two older sisters are lawyers. For me, I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want anything that would task me academically. I just wanted to just go to school because that was what was expected of me. So I was just able to cruise. So at that time, I was trying to figure myself out, though, because it felt like I had two older siblings who would walk into a room from the age of 5. They knew they wanted to be lawyers. They knew what they wanted to do. You know, I feel for me, every time they ask my sisters, what do you want to do? You want to be a lawyer? What do you want to do? You want to be a lawyer? They came to me, I was like, today I'll say I want to be a policeman. Tomorrow I'll say I'll be a carpenter. Tomorrow I'll say, so I was just, they didn't quite think I was going to amount to much. But thank God I've been able to make my parents proud of me with how far I've come, you know, in my life. And I was able to strike off the two things they didn't want me to do, get pregnant out of wedlock, and I was also able to finish school. You know, so at that time, I really didn't quite understand who I was, didn't know who I was. And so when I was around people, obviously I had a bit of a low self-esteem, issues with my self-esteem as well. So I can imagine, obviously, coming into a room and people interpreting my low self-esteem and my not knowing how to communicate, or because also my older sisters were very, maybe because of the training they had with my parents, I don't know how to say, on lawyer, you know, how do you say, oh, yeah, in English? They were, pardon? Jovial, thank you. They were jovial. So my mom would always say, oh, lawyer, yeah, oh, lawyer, yeah. And I was just thinking, you know what? If I don't want to talk to people, I don't want to talk to people. I just want to be by myself. Also because I was masking, if I talk, I'm afraid of sounding stupid. I'm afraid of saying something wrong. And that's why I'm glad I'm able to do better with my daughter. Just a few days ago, I was telling her, we're writing a series of books. So my daughter and I, who's 5, we wrote a book called Lulu Learn. So it's a book that teaches children, you know, how to do different things, life lessons, basically. I have a book for adolescents as well called Lara's Lessons. I'm very passionate about young girls and young people generally. And so I wrote Lara's Lessons because I wanted to teach young people, adolescents, life lessons. So when I had my daughter and I was trying to be more intentional as a parent with her, we started writing this book called Lulu Learn. So we have one called Lulu Learns to Speak Up and Lulu Learns to Be Grateful. And so her and I were talking about, because I think it was that I went to her open day and a teacher was saying, which is very unlike her at home. At home, you know how your children are lions at home, and then in school they're like, you know. And so a teacher was saying that, she could speak out more. She would do well to speak out more. So I was speaking to her while we were in the car, and she was saying something. And then so we came up with our next book from actually teaching her about speaking up. And we're talking about how, you know, sometimes you're afraid of speaking up because you're afraid of saying the wrong things. But you can only learn. The best way to learn is to make your mistake and get correction. If you're hiding your correction, even, you know, the Bible talks about, you know, he that hides their sin cannot prosper. But if you confess and, you know, forsake it, you know. So I always understand for when I was younger as well. So the reason why I didn't speak up was because I was afraid of saying something stupid. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. So I always admire my, you know, sisters and some of my friends who just walk into a room and they'll just say something. Even when they said something silly, you know, it was just not a big deal. But I wasn't brave enough to make those mistakes. So people interpreted that for, she's proud. So when I'm around my cousins that I felt like, they've come from abroad or they're more, you know, exposed or more brilliant than I was, for me, the signal I was sending, what I was communicating was, you know, there's something they call that face now on social media. But I always communicated that, she's proud, she doesn't want to say anything, she doesn't like us. So it's important to know that there's so much power in how you communicate, because just like I listed, a lot of us should be in our dream jobs. A lot of us who desire to be married should be married. A lot of us who desire to have more friends should have more friends, but it's because of the way we're communicating. So we cannot overemphasize the power of communication, because for some people, it's the village, it's their village people. They think that they're going to church to bang their head on the floor about, they think that they're going to their village to say, oh, who's doing me? It's really because they're not communicating well. So we obviously know that communication obviously is, like I said, can be verbal, can be non-verbal, can be written as well. And there's so much power in how you do it. So it's important to learn it because it's a skill. Just like how the MC said, or was it Miss Debbie that talked about how a lot of us on our CVs, we say we have great communication skills because we copied and pasted stuff off of the internet and we put it on our CV. But it's something that needs to be learned, and that's why I applaud Miss Debbie for putting this together. Some people just think, okay, is it not just, that's why when I get it, when people say, you're on radio, is it not just by talking? I always sometimes like to invite them on radio. As a guest, though, just invite, Shebi, it's not just to talk. Your job is so easy. Is it not just to talk? Good. So there's some of them I've had the privilege to just invite on radio as a guest or not even as an anchor. And then I just turn on the mic and I ask them a question and it's like, and their palm is sweaty, you know, and all of that. So it's not just speaking. Because if we were just speaking, we wouldn't have people who are even charging in dollars just to go and speak. You know, we wouldn't have people who you just see like that they just get everything they want just from how they speak. It's not just speaking. And contrary to what people say, you can just, it's something you need to learn. It's a skill. It's a soft skill, but it's important for everybody. Unfortunately, and that's what I'm trying to do better with my daughter. Because unfortunately, some of us, our parents didn't quite raise us to be great communicators. Because if we're raised in the generation that I was raised in, Why did you do that? If you want to talk, you are talking to me. If you don't talk, are you not the one I'm talking to? So we're really confused. We don't know if we should talk, when we should not talk, and that's also part of communication. Because some people are great speakers, but they don't know when to talk and when to. And it's part of communication. Part of communication is knowing when to be quiet, when to speak up, how to speak up. And that's why I'm very privileged that as a mom who's very intentional, I'm teaching my daughter early. I'm teaching my daughters, early. And it's so important that as parents, we teach our children good communication skills because it will help them further in life. I've always admired people, and for me, I think it's a matter of parenting as well. When I was younger, I've always admired children who can just question things. For me, I wasn't really raised to question things. I was raised to just keep quiet, don't talk, sit down. Even though my parents didn't deliberately do that, but it was just, so I always admired, children who would come, and that's why I tell my children as well, when I say, why did you do that? Really and truly, I'm not just asking that as the average African parent who just wants to say, why did you do that? And just wants to run. I really want to know your thought process. I really want to know why you do, because the only way we would effectively stop you from making some of these mistakes is actually to know what you were thinking before you did that. So I'm always saying that with my children. I really want to know. But when I was growing up, it was obviously not something, if they say, why did you do that? It's because what's coming next is boss, So if you're a parent, it's so important to empower your children with great communication skills. Because sadly, one of the reasons why a lot of young girls, young children are also abused is because some of them don't know how to speak out, don't know how to speak up. And so for me, I take that, I'm very passionate about things like that. And so it's important that every time I'm around young people, I'm telling them, speak up. Because I'm also always telling them, don't say because an adult is talking to you or, then that means, you should. Because adults are sometimes the most wrong people ever. So like I said, when I was younger, I used to admire, children who could just speak, politely, however, but speak up, say their mind. And so I was determined that when I grew up, it was as little as that when I grew up, I was going to learn how to speak, learn how to, comport myself. And I'm really grateful for how far I have come. All right, so let's talk about power, the benefits of effective communication skills. Because also one of the things about communication is also listening. Like I said, being a good communicator is knowing when to talk and when not to talk. And for a lot of us, sometimes you're butting heads with somebody and the person is saying, you're not listening. It's because most of the time we're just waiting to respond. And part of communication is being able to listen, being able to get feedback. And a lot of us are not great with that. So the benefits of being able to communicate properly is that you can also hear where you're going wrong, because we're not perfect. All right, so we're not perfect. So a lot of people, yes, they're great speakers, but they're not great listeners. And listening is also part of communication. Because when you can listen, like I told my daughter, when you speak up, when you make mistakes is when people can correct you. So as opposed to just thinking, oh, I'm always right, and then speaking all the time, listening is also a great part of communication. You go to an interview and you want to talk over your interviewer. It's also one of the reasons why some of us don't have our dream jobs. So it's so important to learn when to speak, when not to speak, and how to speak. Another amazing part of communication is also, like I said, what you're not saying. So how you look is also communicating. So a lot of people, recently there was a lot of uproar over on social media. I don't know if you know the preacher that talked about how, as a lady, if you want to get married, your natural hair. I pitied the preacher because I actually really like her. And I know that her intentions were good, but it was just what she said. And that's a key thing about communication. Your intentions can be good, but we can't see your intentions, unfortunately. And not everybody is going to care enough to say, oh, and she had good intentions. She was dragged by her wig, by her stilettos, all over social media, sadly. I know communication, pastors need great communication skills, parents need great communication skills, whatever area in your life you're at, you need great communication skills. Because look at her, she was talking about how, really and truly, what she was trying to say is, if you want to get married, for those who want to get married, look good. Look good. But obviously, when you hold the mic, sometimes you get really excited. People are clapping for you and you're woo, 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 woo. Oftentimes, it takes a lot of maturity as a communicator to know that even when people are enjoying your communication, enjoying what you're saying, not to just let it get to your head and then now start to, because then she now started talking about how, natural hair, you shouldn't have natural hair. You should wear a wig if you want to look nice, and that then when you now get married, you can remove your wig because, that's tantamount to deceit, Abby, So I think she just went a little overboard. She had great intentions, and that's because I follow her, her church and her prayers and stuff like that. But there are many people that I don't follow them, I don't know them. So if I heard that as well, I probably would have been one of those who put up my ring light as well and bashed her because she was really bashed. So that's an example of, poor communication and what can happen. The power of ineffective communication is that you can get dragged, especially the power of technology now is that nothing is done especially when you put a camera to your face. Unfortunately, you've lost the right to say, but it's my privacy, it's my page. I can say whatever I like. The moment it has come up on public domain, it is for all of us now to now determine. Because what you've done is put up your camera, recorded yourself, and put it on a public platform. And so now it is up to the public to determine and to judge and to drag you if they need to. So we must be careful of what we say, how we say it. All right. So really, the woman was talking about how you dress and all of that. But really, I agree with her that if you want to, nobody wants to be friends with somebody who looks moody all the time, who looks depressed all the time, and all of that. So the power of your communication is that it can earn you great quality friends. People are looking for like minds. Like I said, nobody wants to be friends or want to hang around someone who's always moody, someone who's always negative, someone who's always, poorly dressed. So yes, if you really do want to have friends or get married or whatever, you really should put yourself together because that is super important. All right? So how you dress is also you communicating. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know. I was reading a quote on social media that was talking about how, I can't remember, I think I put it on my story, but I was talking about how you it's not how you present yourself. You have to know who you are. Because it's in knowing who you are that you can effectively communicate who you are. And when you can effectively communicate who you are, then, people will start to respect you. People will think highly of you, etc. So it's important to know who you are. Part of communication starts from knowing who you are, loving who you are, appreciating who you are, building and evolving. That's all part of effective communication. Because if you're not totally done, if you're not totally aware, self-aware, you will go out, and in this day and age where everybody has a ring light and everybody has a microphone, everybody's communicating on social media now. Everybody has a podcast, everybody has a YouTube video, everybody has a platform. And so that's why we're seeing so much, let me see, I don't want to use stupidity, but for want of a better word, we're seeing so much stupidity on a global, stage. Because everybody can buy ring lights, everybody can carry a microphone now. If for example, you've been turned down radio stations because you don't communicate well, just go and open your own podcast, just go and start your own podcast. You've been turned down because you're not, instead of taking the criticism and the feedback and going to, work on yourself, even on radio these days, you hear all sorts of accents, after American accent to jam British accent, then Yoruba accent to not jam Igbo accent, and then you've left your audience confused. So even on radio, the standard is much lower because they don't want to pay. So if I'm going to pay people 10,000 or 20,000, of course, you're not going to hire me and pay me that. So you're going to hire somebody who knows who they are. And so they'd rather pay somebody who's just going to come, make grammatical errors, and just say all sorts of nonsense. So you must be very careful who you listen to, even on radio these days, because most employers don't want to pay. And they'd rather, in quotes, for want of a better statement, hire monkeys and pay peanuts. Because if you want to hire somebody who's professional, who knows what they're doing, you have to be ready to pay. All right, so you have to be. So everybody has a platform. And so everyone, instead of actually going to do the work that needs to be done to be effective communicators, we just put up our ring lights, put up our microphone, and, there we go. And of course, also, because mediocrity is so celebrated in this day and age, we're so fast to celebrate mediocrity. As long as somebody looks flashy and they're able to, bamboozle you, this person becomes a superstar and you're like, wow, oh my goodness, so we celebrate a lot of mediocrity. So you have to determine that, okay, yes, you obviously want to get on a global stage, be able to speak to quality people, but you're ready to do the work that needs to be done to be an effective communicator. And that is one of the tips I would give is listen to people who speak well. Garbage in, garbage out is what we often say when it comes to computer. If you listen to people who speak bad grammar, who speak badly, you will also speak badly. So, and it's also important. I know that when I was growing up, I remember when I determined that I was going to speak very good English, when I was going to be articulate. I made this decision just on my own, and that's because I met one lady who was my neighbor, and it was the way she was speaking, and I just determined that I was going to speak articulately. So one of the things I started doing was reading more books. So read more books, read books. Find words that you don't know the meaning of, go to the dictionary, find their meanings and use them. And then don't worry that your friends will laugh at you and say, what's this one doing? What's all this grammar? I beg, speak properly, Joe. Speak properly in spite of the people around you. I know that it's going to be awkward, it's going to be weird at first, but in the long run, you'll be the better for it. So for me, it's hard for me to speak bad grammar now. It's just hard because it's a part of me. But if I were just only speaking bad grammar, at certain points, and then when I'm at home, I just speak badly all the time, it will be hard to be articulate and to be eloquent all the time. So it's important that you speak articulately as much as you can all the time. And when you're corrected, take the feedback. It's important to take the feedback because how you communicate can really determine how far you will go. And like I said, there are brilliant people. There are people who are brilliant, but unfortunately, they will always speak on local stages because their communication is bad. I know some brilliant people, trust me. I know some people that when I sit down with them, wow, the kind of things that they say, but unfortunately, and I'm not even just saying that, not all of us, there are people on the global stages who, yes, we have been colonized, so English is our lingua franca, thank you. So people will say, but English is not our first language, whatever. That is our lingua franca. So unfortunately or fortunately, and I'm glad that in Ibadan now, there are people who are doing presentations in Yoruba who are now becoming huge because I love it. We have sports presenters who are very popular and they're doing it in Yoruba. So if that's what you want to do, fantastic. There are people who are in Asia who don't have to speak English. They have interpreters all over. But even in Yoruba, I've realized that it's not just by saying, I don't understand English, so let me speak Yoruba. Speaking Yoruba, I speak Yoruba. Trust me, when I'm home, I speak Yoruba. But doing presentations in Yoruba is a totally different ball game. Just like how you can think you speak English until you have to address people. Then that's when you realize that, and that's not effective communication because you're making your audience feel weird. Because if your every sentence you have and so imagine I've been called here as this speaker, and every time when I got on stage, it was full of so it would make you feel uncomfortable because you'll be feeling sorry for me. Please let her just wrap up quickly so she can go. It's just like how singers, for example, I remember I went to music school for a few years. I remember one of the things that teachers used to say was, if you're feeling sick, just don't sing. As opposed to, okay, you know what, my voice is really, really bad today, but I'm just gonna sing. No, spare us. Thank you. Spare us. Just sit down and go and get your voice to heal. Because there are people who do that. They know they're sick, their voice not at, optimal, performance, but they just want to sing and then they want to apologize before. Why? Because then I'm going to be thinking, poor you, instead of enjoying the song. So same way, if you're going to communicate, you're going to stand in front of people. If you know you're not ready yet, you're not ripe yet, trust me, it will be a total disaster. Same with Yoruba. I speak Yoruba at home with my parents. But trust me, once people say, take this mic and speak, hey, so let me try. So, see, that happens to me all the time. But trust me, I'm speaking Yoruba to my mom. She understand. I speak Yoruba, but trust me, give me the mic and say, do a presentation in Yoruba. It's like, oh my goodness. I start to get hot all over because then I know that, wow, what does yesterday mean? Okay, Lano wants to quick in wasi, maybe shaking waso. That sounds weird. But when I'm communicating with just my friends, so don't assume that because you speak English with your friends, that you are an effective communicator. Because even when you're on stage, is a whole different ball game. The confidence that you need to effectively communicate, obviously that comes with experience. So if you don't put yourself out there before you come on a big stage, let's just start from a stage like this one. Start with if you're a Christian, house fellowship. Tell them you MC that your house fellowship for the day. Start in your family. I remember that as little as from age 10, I was the most confused child, but yet one thing that my mom should have known was that every time they had friends over, there was no party in the house, but I'll go and make a microphone from something. And I'll start saying, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the Giwa house. Today, I'm going to, and then I was always, wanting to speak. And that's where I started from as little as age 10, So from there, I went to, in class, always wanting to be the MC of this. And I was just always looking for an opportunity to speak. So if you're saying, but I'm afraid of speaking, yes, you perhaps may be articulate, but being confident on a stage like this comes from years of stages, little stages, big stages. For example, if I'm in front of 1 million people, I can never be shy. But the odd thing about me is that if I'm talking to you one-on-one, I can be a little shy, which is weird. There's some people, the opposite is the case for them. When they're with one person, it's like, they can be champions. But just put them in front of 10 people, and then they start to shake. So obviously, confidence with effective communicating comes with experience. So please start from where, if you're embarrassed, it's not national dragging that will happen to you. You just don't want to think, I speak well now, and then you're speaking to 1,000 people. You obviously are doing yourself a great injustice. All right, so start small and do it as frequently as you can. and offer yourself. Anytime there's a small event in your church, at your office, offer yourself start from where you are most comfortable, and then you can work that confidence up to the point where anytime you're handed a mic, even if you don't know what to say, you haven't practiced anything, you can say something. And that's super important, because when you can effectively communicate, you can teach. So I keep saying how you're brilliant. Trust me, I think everybody has some level of brilliance. But it's just that we don't communicate it, or we don't know how to communicate it is a problem. That you think, why do people think I'm stupid? Why do people think I don't know anything? I think all of us know something. All of us have a grasp of something. Even if it's something if you ask me to come and talk about maths, for example, I will fumble woefully. In fact, the way I'll fumble, I will wumble and fumble. If you ask me to come and talk, so also another thing about effective communication is stop trying to talk about things you don't like. Why? Life is beautiful. Life is hard enough. You don't want to, just because you want to sound intelligent. I remember when I started my career in radio, and obviously there were not very many ladies that were talking about current affairs and stuff. And I really was just like, you know what? I just don't want to talk about this, because it takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of always being in the news. And you know how depressing it can be to always read the news. And I really just didn't want to. And I found that if you're, for example, tell me to talk about young girls, tell me to talk about girls, tell me to talk to girls. I can be on this stage for the next 2 hours. Tell me to talk about speaking. Tell me to talk about effective communication. I can be on this stage for the next few hours. But start telling me to talk about, current affairs. It takes a lot more work. So I find that because I can do current affairs, but it doesn't come easily to me. I find I have to work harder. So on Monday, for example, at 8 to 9, you hear me, for example, on radio talking about what's in the newspapers, etc. It's taking a lot of me going through the newspapers, trying to remember, okay, this happened in Ondo State. So the same thing is happening in River State. So how can I? But if that's work, and I know it's because I'm being paid, that's what they require from me. But if you're going to talk, you want to be a speaker, find your niche. It's so important to find your niche, because when you find your niche, when they give you the microphone, it will come easier for you, as opposed to, okay, I want to sound brilliant. And then you want to sound brilliant, but all because you want to sound brilliant, you eventually start sounding silly. All right, so talk about what you're interested in. Talk about what comes easily for you. For you, it could be fashion. And then there are great speakers out there. Yes, I know that oftentimes people take people more seriously when they're talking about serious things. But I know people who are in global stages, and if you watch TED Talks are not just talking about political issues. I know someone who did a TED Talk about worry. And I watched it now, and I was, wow. It was quite fascinating. So TED Talks about anything that you've mastered somewhat. All right, and that brings me also effective communication doesn't mean everything's going to come easy. Even if I'm talking about, I'm very passionate about young girls. I still need to do some research. I'm not just going to come here and say young girls should just talk. Young girls should just dress up. Young girls should just be. Young girls should just do. Is that a brilliant? No, there's nothing you are learning from that. So to some extent, I always tell my children, you can do hard things. And we always have to do hard things, even when we're doing the things we love. So my daughter, for example, she doesn't want to do her hair. I was still telling her, I'm always making up stories with her. She just didn't want to do her hair. Her hair is very full and natural and very long. She doesn't like to wash her hair. So I made up a story about this young girl who didn't want to wash her hair. And and because she didn't want to wash her hair became like weed. So she thought she was having fun because her mom had said, okay, fine, I'll give you 3 weeks of not washing your hair. And then she said, oh, fine, great. And then she didn't wash her hair. So the first week, the hair started itching. So my hair has become itchy. And her mom said, well, you don't want to wash your hair, right? She said, oh, well, yeah, I don't want to wash my hair. I don't mind it being itchy. By the second week, the hair had become very tangled. Mom, my hair is tangled. I can't even scratch my head properly without my fingers. And her mom said, you didn't want to wash your hair. It's getting tangled. And then the third week, her hair had become very matted. And then her friends had started laughing at her. So a story I made up this morning with my daughter. Very weird. I do these weird things with her. Her hair had become very... So I was doing her hair while I was telling this story, because I was shampooing. I was, that's why I was a bit late, Miss Debbie, sorry. Because I had to wash her hair this morning. So I said her hair had become matted. Then her friends, the consequences is, her friends had now started laughing at her. Oh, look at you. You look unkempt. Blah, 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 blah. And then she had to beg her mom that, please. And then the consequences of not washing her hair for 3 weeks, even though it takes longer for your hair to get to that point. But hey, I was talking to a 5-year-old, so. So. And I said to my mom, said, well, that means we have to cut because your hair is matted, it's tangled, it's dirty, it's unhealthy. And so she was sad that she had to cut her beautiful long hair, but she had to cut, but then the hair grew back. And then she had learned the lesson that, even though you want a long, beautiful hair, you have to do the work. So you want to speak properly, you want to speak, even when you're speaking about things you love, there are some tough things you have to do. You have to do research. No matter how much you love painting, there are some days that you don't feel like painting. No matter how much, maybe there's some people I heard that their job is just to sleep. I heard it somewhere online that they just sleep. It's like people are using them to do research. So I'm sure that there are sometimes they're like, I don't want to sleep again. There's some people that I remember one time I would say, my ultimate job would be like a food taster. Just be tasting food, even though I'm not that much of a foodie, but what's the easiest job in the world? Just taste food. But I'm sure that for a food taster, there's some days that they'll bring food to you and you just want to throw up. Do you understand? Yes. No matter how much you love what you do, there's still the tough part. So I always tell my children, you can do tough things. No matter how easy, even if it's your job. I know some kids on YouTube who are, their job is to test games, toys. I'm sure there's some days that I just want to sleep. I just want to watch TV. I want to do something else. So even when you're talking about the things that you love and that come easily to you, you still have to do some research. Or else, when you don't do research, because one of the things about not communicating effectively is that it's not that you don't know what you're talking about, but you haven't done enough research, and so you're not confident. Because the key thing about effective communication really is, number one, just like driving, the number one thing about driving is confidence. Once you have confidence that, I can do this thing, the remaining thing about driving is just to learn if you can accelerate, gear, especially if you're driving auto, the easiest thing. So driving is really like effective communication. Once you have confidence, I think half of the work is done. And you can build that confidence from, of course, time of doing, communicating in front of people. But the other 50%, unfortunately, I cannot come and bragado you people into, I'm very confident, I'm nicely dressed, and I've done my makeup, so I'm just going to talk nonsense here. We have brilliant people here who will say, that's not right. Except even when you're talking to 5-year-olds, I found that children are brilliant. So even when you're talking to 5-year-olds, there's sometimes I say some things to my daughter, for example, because I can make up stories like this, weird stories. If I want to teach her a lesson, I found that telling stories teaches her more than I've really had to cane her. I really had to shout. But I've been telling her stories since she was born. And my older daughters, they're gone off to uni. But I've become more intentional with her because she was like my experiment. That, okay, I want to do without caning and shouting all the time. And the experiment has worked. Storytelling has been a huge, has made such a huge impact on her. So I tell a lot of stories that I don't even remember. I've told stories. That's why we decided to start writing those books. So I found that, telling her stories. And so sometimes when I tell somebody stories, she's like, but mommy, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't. I'm like, yeah, it's a story, and I just come up with this. So please, just take that story like that. I can't remember. There was a story I thought about, and there was a part that I just had to because it's 5 years. Let me just bamboozle her, Jerry. She was like, So imagine if a 5-year-old can call me out on saying nonsense. So imagine standing in front of brilliant people and saying because you're confident, then that's enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. So half of the work is done. Obviously, when you're confident, and confidence comes from looking good. When you look good, there's something about it. I know. It's not about when you look good, you're prepared. I came, for example, imagine if I was looking bad and I didn't like how I looked. Also, remember, that's also relative. That people don't like how I look is not my business. Long as I look in the mirror and I like how I look, that's all that matters. And that's come from obviously years of confidence, of being very self-aware, loving me, appreciating me, and not caring really what anyone else thinks, especially if it's not like constructive. I really don't care. So confidence can also come from, building up yourself, physically, making sure you look well, you look good. Once you come on that stage, once you look good, you feel a lot more confident. And then when you've done your research, that also adds to your confidence. And when you've done your research, you know what you want to say. You're speaking properly, you're sending the right message, because communication is not just what you say, but it's what they receive. The communication doesn't end with, I've said it, I've said my own piece. No, but what am I hearing? What am I receiving? So it's effective only when you get the message. And from today, you are like, okay, great. She said that when I leave here, I need to work on my appearance, I need to do some research, even if I'm talking about art. Okay, let me go online. And Google has made life so easy. Go online, do the research, read books, which makes my understanding of the subject richer. So when I'm talking about it, it's like, it's just coming out because I've done my research. It's something I love, number one. I've done my research. Then I've built my confidence over time. So when I stand in front of people, I'm not just, having stage fright, etc. So it's a component of different things. And then at the end, when you've spoken, you've put all of the things that you have in your head down, and your audience is able to receive it and do something about it, that's powerful and that's effective. All right? And we're not just talking about a global stage. We're even just talking about relating with family. Just like I said, some of us, our family members go left when we come in this direction because we just don't know how to talk. We don't know how to take feedback. We think we're always right, and that we're not. That's not great. All right? So we're not just even in the family, at work. Some of us are a nightmare to work with, because we don't know how to communicate. For example, and these things you can get in books, you can read anywhere. Even for example, there are new age ways of saying, let me see, this Instagram thing I saw on how to say, I can't remember, but how to say it, but in a polite way. There are ways that you can say things. You can tell someone to go to hell. and not have to literally say go to hell. So it takes effective communication and maturity to say to your boss, for example, oh, well, you're wrong. You should know that you shouldn't just tell your boss you are wrong because you are caught in trouble. But there's a way you can tell your boss you're wrong without, there's a way that, for example, I've learned that you've done teamwork with somebody and then they're trying to take the glory. There's a way you can, for example, in management, I've learned that because there are not very many women represented in management in the places that I've worked. So oftentimes I'm always like, okay, I'm a representative of a woman. If every time we're in management meeting, it's time for refreshment, I'm the one that what message am I sending? What am I communicating about women? That when we're in meetings, your own job is to do the domestic. Or when we're in meetings, the women don't talk. What does that say? The men are more brilliant, because that's not the case. So I've had to, there are cases like that where I have to, in meetings, I have to be intentional about listening so that I must contribute. So that I don't want to send the signal that in meetings, all the women just keep quiet and they're pressing their phones. And the men are the ones talking and more confident about the subject matter. So I've had to be more intentional. When I'm in meetings, I'm paying more attention. And I'm writing because I must have question. I must disagree with something somebody said. I must have a better, do you understand? Because that's super important. That's for me as a woman, and that's something I've been able to do intentionally. So even at work, someone's trying to take the glory and you don't speak up. The way you speak is not by saying, no, it's a lie, yo. I'm the one that did the job. No. But by saying, oh, well, thank you very much, actually. We worked on this project together. And when I conceptualize this, the way I've said it, I've not been vindictive or even say, it's a lie, she's lying. They'll just think you're a bitter, immature person at work. I said, thank you very much for actually, when we came up with this idea and I conceptualized the idea, this is how I did this, and then he did this. That way, everybody now knows that, so you're not even the one that did the work, and you're here trying to form, but the way you've maturely taken the control from that person says a lot about you. All right, so effective communication at work is super important. A lot of people have not been promoted for years just because they're mouth. If they promote them like this, everybody will scatter from that office. So how you protect, when you get, there was a time at work, people were like, why are you always dressing? We work on radio. But the way I dress to work, you think I'm working in news at 10 on Arise TV. But for me, I just wanted to communicate who I was. I worked my former radio station before I became GM at Vintage FM. People used to say that, but I wanted to portray a side of me at work. Portray respect, because I also know that those kind of things have a way of getting you seen by management. Because if you're always coming to work in slippers, who wants to bring you into management? How do you climb up, your career? How do you climb up? So I knew that the way I portrayed myself, the way I came to work, even though I'm on radio and nobody's seeing me, is beyond me just coming on radio to talk. There's more to life beyond, you just doing your work. And a lot of us are doing a great job. But unfortunately, because we're not communicating who we are well, maybe it may be because we don't know who we are. When you know who you are, and I know that, okay, I'm a powerful person, I'm respectable, I'm fun, but I have boundaries. I'm telling you who I like to communicate every day. So you have to know who you are, list who you are. I like to have, so there are people I've worked with for 13 years in my past radio station. You will never hear that, I fought with people. You will rarely hear that. But I'm very friends with people, I have my boundaries, but not very many people will say that I'm not besties with people. So I'm able to create boundaries, but be very fun with people. I can laugh with you today, but that's it. And we can leave it there. All right, so I wanted to project respectful, have boundaries, and management material. I'm brilliant. So I had to start dressing like that so that I could actually get those roles. So for some of us, how you communicate, how you present yourself is telling us who you are. You're coming to work and you're just chewing chewing-gum and you're just coming in bathroom slipper. You're telling me who you are, that you're someone that I cannot take seriously because I cannot put big projects in the hands of somebody who just does anyhow. So how you project, I'm not saying go and be a faker, but no, the unfortunate truth is, they will address you the way you dress. That's the unfortunate truth. You're not going to see a book. If you see a boring book, unfortunately, you're going to look at the book and think, this book doesn't look interesting. Then you look at the blob at the back. This book is nothing. And then you put that book there. There are lots of great books that we've passed up because the author didn't quite, do very well with the cover of the book. Do you understand? So see yourself as a book. Even though you want to have a good cover, though, you must have great content, because there are books that we bought and they've deceived us into thinking it was an interesting book, and then we bought it and it was like, so obviously I'm not saying, be a fake. No, what must be inside must also, tally with what's on the outside. So you're carrying yourself as someone who's respectable and all of that, and they offer you this job and you are something else. So all of that is important. So all of this I'm saying to say that your communication can actually really be a barrier to your next level. Not effectively communicating may have been the barrier to where you want to be in your next level, in your next life. And so how you communicate yourself starts from who you are, who you see yourself as, and then how you want to portray that person to people. And then building that confidence to the point where when you communicate verbally, then you're communicating who you are, the right thing, and people can get that message and do something about it. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you, and of course to Ms. Debbie again for having me speak about the power of effective communication. And I hope that from here, everyone here will go out there and communicate who they are effectively so that you can start to open those doors that you need for your next level. Thank you very much.